Johnny Hazard knew that in a city where humans were considered little more than amusing vermin, the only way to earn respect was to take it with both fists and never let go. He stood outside the Violet Edge, a two-story establishment that squatted on the corner of Merchants Row like a bruise on the face of Bright City. Neon signs flickered in the perpetual twilight, casting purple and pink shadows across the rain-slicked street. The bar occupied the ground floor while the strip club operated upstairs, and both had been under the control of the Kravix syndicate for the past 6 years. That was about to change. "You sure about this, boss?" Tony Ferraro adjusted the plasma pistol tucked into his belt, his scarred knuckles white against the grip. The stocky enforcer had been with Johnny since the beginning, back when they were both running small-time cons in the outer districts. Johnny lit a cigarette and took a long drag. "No, but we're doing it anyway." Behind them, the rest of the crew waited in the shadows. Lisa Yang crouched on a fire escape across the street, her sniper rifle trained on the entrance. The engineer-turned-sharpshooter had lost her left eye to a Kravix blade 3 months ago and hadn't forgiven them for it. Vincent Kozlov leaned against the alley wall, his massive frame barely contained by his armored jacket. The former dockworker could bench press a cargo hauler and had the temperament of a sleeping bear until someone woke him up. The last member stood beside Johnny, silent as a ghost. Rachel Ortiz cleaned her fingernails with a combat knife, her dark eyes tracking every movement on the street. The assassin rarely spoke, but when she did, people listened. She'd been the hardest to recruit, but Johnny had offered her something none of the alien syndicates ever would: equal standing. "Remember the plan?" Johnny flicked the cigarette into a puddle. "We go in fast, we go in hard, and we don't stop until every Kravix in that building is either dead or running." "What about the customers?" Lisa's voice crackled through his earpiece. "They can leave or they can bleed. Their choice." Johnny pushed through the entrance, Tony at his shoulder. The interior smelled like cheap alcohol and cheaper perfume. A Kravix bartender, all 4 arms and chitinous plating, looked up from washing glasses. His compound eyes widened as Johnny pulled his pistol and shot him twice in the chest. The alien crashed backward through a shelf of bottles, purple blood mixing with expensive liquor. Patrons scattered. A Thulian merchant ran under a table. 2 Grax miners bolted for the back exit. A cluster of synth gamblers froze, their tentacles curling in fear. Johnny let them go. This wasn't about them. 3 Kravix enforcers emerged from a back room, their weapons already drawn. Tony dropped to one knee and fired, catching the first in the throat. The enforcer gurgled and fell. Vincent charged through the front door like a battering ram, tackling the second enforcer and driving him into the wall with enough force to crack the plaster. Exoskeleton crunched under his fists. The third enforcer aimed at Johnny's head. A red dot appeared on the alien's temple half a second before the window exploded inward. The Kravix collapsed, his brains decorating the bar. "Thanks, Lisa." Johnny moved toward the stairs. "Don't mention it. You've got more coming down from the 2nd floor." He heard them before he saw them, the clicking of leg joints on metal steps. Johnny gestured to Rachel, who melted into the shadows beside the stairwell. The first enforcer descended quickly, mandibles clicking in their war language. Rachel's knife found the soft joint between his head and thorax. She twisted, and he dropped without a sound. The second enforcer saw his companion fall and opened fire blindly. Energy bolts scorched the walls. Vincent threw a table at him, providing cover as Johnny advanced. The enforcer's weapon clicked empty. Johnny didn't give him time to reload. 2 shots sent her mass. The alien stumbled backward and tumbled down the stairs. "Upstairs is locked down," Lisa reported. "I count 8 Kravix and maybe 20 civilian workers. They're barricading the doors." Johnny reloaded. "Vincent, we need a door." The big man grinned and cracked his knuckles. He took the stairs 3 at a time, his boots thundering on the metal. At the top landing, he didn't bother with the handle. Vincent's shoulder met the reinforced door with the force of a small explosive. Wood splintered. The lock tore free. He crashed through into a hallway lined with private rooms. Kravix enforcers poured from doorways. Johnny and Tony followed Vincent up, laying down covering fire. An enforcer's mandible took a bullet and exploded in a shower of chitin. Another caught 3 rounds in the thorax and folded like paper. The corridor became a killing floor, the air thick with gunsmoke and the metallic stench of alien blood. Rachel appeared from nowhere, her knife finding kidney equivalents and major arteries. She moved like water, flowing around attacks and leaving corpses in her wake. A Kravix twice her size swung a shock club at her head. She ducked under it, drove her knife into his eye cluster, and kicked him into his companions. Vincent grabbed an enforcer by the thorax and threw him through a wall. The alien crashed into one of the private rooms where a dancer screamed and ran. The enforcer tried to rise. Vincent's boot came down on his head like a hammer. Back room end of the hall, Lisa's voice cut through the chaos. That's where the boss is holed up. Johnny advanced, stepping over bodies. The door at the hall's end was reinforced steel with a biometric lock. He studied it for a moment, then shot out the control panel. Sparks flew. The door remained sealed. Needs a key. Tony pointed to a severed Kravix hand lying in the hallway. Rachel picked it up without hesitation and pressed it to the scanner. The door hissed open. The office beyond was lavish by bright city standards. Real wood furniture, Earth import whiskey on the shelves, and windows that actually opened. Behind a massive desk sat Vixthal, the Violet Edge's owner and a lieutenant in the Kravix syndicate. His chiton was polished black, his robes were expensive silk, and his compound eyes tracked Johnny with cold intelligence. The human, Vixthal's translator, rendered his clicking speech into flat, emotionless words. "You've made a grave mistake." Johnny leveled his pistol. "I make a lot of those. You think killing me will give you this establishment? The syndicate will crush you. They will peel your skin and wear it as a trophy." "Maybe." Johnny pulled the trigger. Vixthal's head snapped back, purple blood spraying the expensive chair. His body twitched once and went still. Tony whistled low. So much for negotiation. He wasn't going to negotiate. Johnny holstered his weapon. "Vincent, round up the workers. Anyone who wants to keep their job can stay. Anyone who wants to leave gets walking money. Rachel, secure the perimeter. Lisa, keep eyes on the street. I want to know the second any Kravix reinforcements show up." The next 30 minutes passed in controlled chaos. Vincent gathered the dancers, bartenders, and service staff in the main floor. Most were synth, a few Grax, one Thulian. They huddled together, tentacles and appendages trembling. Johnny addressed them from behind the bar, pouring himself a shot of actual Earth whiskey. "New management as of tonight," he downed the shot. "You work for me now, same pay, better protection. Anyone who doesn't like that can walk out right now with 500 credits and no hard feelings." A synth dancer raised a tentacle. "The Kravix will retaliate. Let them try." Johnny set the glass down. "Anyone else?" Silence. No one moved toward the door. "Good, now let's get ready for what's coming." Tony approached as the staff dispersed. "You really think we can hold this place? We don't have a choice. We needed a foothold, and this is it. Now we dig in and make them bleed for every inch if they want it back." Lisa's voice crackled over the comm. "Boss, we've got movement. 3 vehicles, Kravix markings, heading this way." Johnny smiled without humor. "That was faster than I expected. Everyone to defensive positions. Vincent, you're on the front door. Rachel, take the back. Tony, you're with me on the second floor. Lisa, start dropping targets." The crew moved with practiced efficiency. Johnny climbed back up to the second floor windows, Tony right behind him. Through the neon-washed glass, he could see 3 armored transports rolling down Merchant's Row. They stopped 50 meters from the Violet Edge and disgorged Kravix soldiers. 20, maybe 30 of them, all armed with military-grade weapons. "They're not messing around," Tony muttered. A Kravix with golden markings stepped forward, a loudspeaker clutched in one of his hands. "Humans, you have taken what belongs to the Syndicate. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick." Johnny opened the window and leaned out. "How about you turn around and walk away? We'll call it even." The Kravix's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. "You are outnumbered 5-1. I've had worse odds." Johnny ducked back inside. "Lisa, light them up." The first shot came from across the street, punching through a Kravix officer's head and dropping him like a stone. The second shot took out the golden-marked leader before he could give an order. Panic rippled through the Syndicate forces. "Open fire!" Johnny's voice boomed across the comm. The Violet Edge erupted in violence. Vincent opened up with a salvaged machine gun from the front entrance, the weapon chattering as it spewed rounds into the street. Kravix fell in waves, their armor insufficient against sustained fire. Rachel appeared on a nearby rooftop, her pistol barking methodically as she picked off targets trying to flank. Johnny and Tony fired from the second floor, their shots disciplined and accurate. A Kravix squad tried to breach the front door. Vincent met them with his gun empty and his fists full. He caught the first by the mandibles and twisted until chitin cracked. The second got a headbutt that shattered his eye cluster. The third took a punch to the thorax that caved in his chest plate. Lisa's rifle sang its deadly song, each shot a precisely placed death sentence. Officers, heavy weapons specialists, anyone who looked important, all fell to her scope. The Kravix tried to suppress her position, but she'd already moved to a new perch before their return fire arrived. A Kravix with a rocket launcher took aim at the building. Rachel's bullet caught him in the brain before he could fire. The launcher fell and another soldier tried to grab it. Lisa's shot took off his hand. The weapon clattered into the gutter. The firefight lasted 12 minutes. When the smoke cleared, the street was littered with Kravix bodies. A few survivors limped away, dragging wounded companions. Johnny watched them go, his weapon still raised. "Let them run," he said into the comm. "Let them tell the syndicate what happens when they come for us." Vincent emerged from the front entrance, his jacket shredded and his face spattered with purple blood. He was grinning. "That all they got? For now." Johnny descended the stairs. "But they'll be back, bigger numbers, better weapons. We need to fortify this place and fast." Rachel appeared from the shadows, already reloading. "I counted 32 Kravix casualties. We took none." "Good." Johnny surveyed the bar. A few stray shots had broken bottles and shattered mirrors, but the structure was intact. "Tony, get on the comm. Reach out to Rodriguez over in the machine district. Tell him we need automated defenses, gun turrets, anything he can spare. Vincent, I want this whole building turned into a fortress by morning. Reinforced doors, blast shutters, the works." "What about the syndicate?" Lisa climbed down from her perch and entered through the front. "They're not going to let this slide." "No, they're not." Johnny walked to the bar and poured another shot. "But we knew that going in. We've got 24 hours, maybe less, before they come back in force. We use that time to turn the Violet Edge into a death trap." The crew worked through the night. Rodriguez arrived with a truck full of salvaged military hardware, automated turrets, sensor arrays, shield generators. Vincent and Tony installed them while Rachel rigged proximity mines around the perimeter. Lisa set up sniper nests on 3 different rooftops, each stocked with ammunition and escape routes. Johnny coordinated from the office that had been Vixthel's, now his. He studied maps of Bright City, marking Kravix territories and potential allies. The Violet Edge was just the beginning. To survive in this city, they needed to expand, to build a network that could stand against the established syndicates. His comm buzzed, an unknown frequency. "This is Hazard," a synthesized voice answered, deliberately obscured. "You've made quite the impression tonight, human. The Kravix are calling for your head. They're welcome to try and take it." "Who is this?" "Someone who appreciates ambition. The Violet Edge was small territory, but you held it against superior numbers. Impressive." Johnny leaned back in the chair. "You didn't call to congratulate me." "No, I called to warn you. The Kravix are gathering forces from 3 districts. They're bringing heavy armor and possibly air support. They mean to erase you from Bright City." "When?" 2 hours from now." The line went dead. Johnny stared at the comm, his mind racing. An anonymous tip could be a trap, but his instincts said otherwise. Someone was watching, evaluating. In Bright City, that could mean opportunity or danger, and usually both. "Crew report," Tony's voice came first. "Turrets are online. We've got overlapping fields of fire covering the entire street." "Mines are set," Rachel added. "Anyone approaching on foot is going to have a bad time." "Shield generator is operational," Vincent rumbled. "It'll stop the first few heavy hits at least." "Sniper nests are ready," Lisa confirmed. "I've got thermal scopes and enough ammunition to hold off an army." Johnny stood and checked his weapons. "Good, because that's exactly what's coming." The crew assembled in the main bar. Dawn was still an hour away, but the artificial lights of Bright City never truly dimmed. Johnny looked at each of them in turn, Tony, Lisa, Vincent, Rachel. They'd followed him into hell tonight, and they'd do it again. "We started this knowing it wouldn't be easy," he said. "The Kravix are coming with everything they have. We hold this ground or we die trying. There's no retreat, no surrender." Tony checked his rifle. "We've been through worse." "Have we?" Lisa raised an eyebrow. "No," Tony admitted, "but we're still here." Vincent laughed, a deep rumble. "Let them come." "I'm not done breaking things yet." Rachel simply nodded, her knife already in hand. The attack came with the false dawn. The first sign was the rumble of heavy engines. Then the street lit up with searchlights as armored assault vehicles rolled into position. Behind them came troop transports, dozens of them, disgorging Kravix soldiers in full combat gear. "Estimate 200 hostiles," Lisa reported from her perch. 3 heavy tanks, multiple APCs, and something big hanging back. Johnny peered through the reinforced windows. The something big was a mobile artillery platform, its main gun capable of reducing the violet edge to rubble. They're not playing around this time. Neither are we. Tony activated the turrets. Red targeting lasers swept across the street. A Kravix officer stepped forward with a loudspeaker. Final warning, humans, surrender now or be annihilated. Johnny opened the window. You want this place? Come and take it. The officer gave a signal. The artillery platform's gun swiveled toward the building. Shield, Johnny shouted. Vincent slammed his fist on the generator's activation panel. A shimmering barrier snapped into place around the violet edge just as the artillery fired. The shell hit the shield and exploded in a brilliant flash. The barrier held but flickered ominously. That won't last long, Vincent warned. It doesn't have to, Johnny keyed the turrets. Light them up. The automated weapons opened fire, their targeting algorithms prioritizing officers and heavy weapons teams. Kravix fell in droves, but more kept coming. The tanks advanced, their main guns targeting the turrets. Explosions rocked the building as defensive weapons were systematically destroyed. Lisa's rifle cracked again and again. Each shot found a target, a tank commander, a squad leader, a soldier with a rocket launcher. But there were too many. For every Kravix she dropped, two more took his place. Rachel, we need those mines. Johnny fired out the window, dropping a soldier trying to place a breaching charge. On it! Rachel triggered the proximity mines. The street erupted in fire and shrapnel. Kravix soldiers flew through the air, their bodies torn apart by the blasts. A tank rolled over a cluster of mines and lurched to a halt, its treads shredded. The crew jumped out and were cut down by turret fire, but the syndicate kept coming. They'd committed too much to back down now. This was about more than the violet edge. It was about sending a message. Humans couldn't be allowed to challenge the established order. The shield failed with a groan of overloaded capacitors. The next artillery shell hit the building directly, tearing a hole in the second-floor wall. Johnny was thrown across the office, his ears ringing. He staggered to his feet, blood running down his face from a gash on his forehead. Vincent, still here, boss. But the generators scrap. Kravix soldiers poured into the building through the breach. Tony met them in the hallway with a shotgun, each blast sending armored bodies flying backward. But they overwhelmed him through sheer numbers, forcing him to retreat step by step. Johnny grabbed his rifle and joined the defense. The hallway became a choke point where Kravix discipline met human desperation. Rachel appeared from a side room, her knife flashing as she hamstrung soldiers and opened arteries. Vincent waded into the press of bodies, his fists rising and falling like pistons. A Kravix officer shot Tony in the shoulder. The enforcer went down with a curse, his weapon clattering away. The officer aimed for a kill shot. Johnny's bullet took him in the throat. He pulled Tony to cover as Rachel and Vincent held the line. How bad? Johnny reloaded. I'll live. Tony gritted his teeth. Just get me a gun. Johnny tossed him a pistol. Make them count. The fighting was brutal and close. No room for tactics, just raw violence and the will to survive. Kravix fell over their own dead, slipping in pools of purple blood. Vincent grabbed a soldier by the leg and swung him like a club, battering his companions. Rachel's knife found every weak point in Kravix's armor, and her hands never stopped moving. But they were being pushed back. For every alien they killed, more climbed through the breach. The second floor was lost. They fell back to the stairs, making the Kravix pay for every step. Lisa, we need something. Johnny emptied his magazine into a charging Kravix and ducked as return fire chewed up the wall behind him. Working on it? From her rooftop perch, Lisa had a clear view of the artillery platform. It was preparing another shot, one that would likely bring down the entire building. She adjusted her scope, calculating wind, distance, and the movement of the crew. The platform ran on a fusion core. Hit it right, and it would go up like a small sun. Lisa took a breath, held it, and squeezed the trigger. The bullet crossed 300 meters in under a second. It punched through the platform's armor plating and into the exposed cooling system of the fusion core. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the street turned white. The explosion vaporized the artillery platform and everything within 20 meters. The shockwave knocked over vehicles and sent Kravix soldiers tumbling like toys. Windows shattered across the district. The surviving syndicate forces scattered, their cohesion broken by the sudden catastrophic loss. Johnny felt the building shake from the blast. What the hell was that? Lisa just saved our lives, Tony said, his voice awed. Through the smoke and chaos, Johnny saw the Kravix forces in disarray. Officers screamed conflicting orders. Soldiers looked for direction that wasn't coming. The assault had broken. Now, push them back. The crew charged down the stairs, firing as they went. The Kravix, already shaken by the explosion, couldn't hold against the sudden reversal. They retreated through the breach, then out into the street. Vincent pursued them, roaring like a madman, his fists still finding targets. Johnny reached the street and raised his rifle. The surviving Kravix were fleeing, dragging wounded and abandoning equipment. He let them go. They'd learned their lesson. The silence after the battle was deafening. Johnny stood in the middle of Merchants Row, surrounded by burning vehicles and alien bodies. His crew emerged from the violet edge, battered but alive. Lisa climbed down from her perch, her rifle slung over her shoulder. Did we just win? Yeah, Johnny wiped blood from his face. We won. Vincent laughed, the sound echoing off the buildings. Those bastards won't forget this. That's the point. Johnny looked at the violet edge. The building was damaged but standing. They came with everything and we held. Every syndicate in Bright City is going to hear about this. Rachel cleaned her knife on a dead Kravix's uniform. They'll come again. Maybe, but not tonight. Johnny surveyed his crew. Tony was wounded but mobile. Lisa looked exhausted but alert. Vincent was covered in alien blood but grinning. Rachel was already thinking 3 moves ahead. Tonight we proved that humans aren't weak. Tonight we earned our place in this city. Tony limped over. What now, boss? Johnny looked up at the violet edge, its neon signs flickering back to life as Vincent restored power. Their headquarters, their foothold, their future. Now we rebuild, we fortify. We recruit, the violet edge is just the beginning. He turned to face his crew. We're going to take this whole district, then the next and the next. We're going to build something that can't be torn down. And we're going to show every alien syndicate in Bright City that humanity isn't just another species to push around. Ambitious, Lisa said. That's why you're here, Johnny smiled. Because you believe we can do it. The crew looked at each other, battered and bloody but unbroken. They'd survived the night. They'd held against impossible odds, and they'd won. Come on. Johnny walked toward the violet edge. We've got work to do. They followed him inside, past the bodies and the debris, into their new headquarters. The staff was already emerging from hiding, returning to their posts with nervous but hopeful expressions. A synth dancer approached Johnny. The Kravix will really leave us alone now? Not exactly. Johnny poured himself a drink. But they know it'll cost them to take this place back. Sometimes that's enough. As dawn broke over Bright City, casting artificial light through the smog and haze, Johnny Hazard stood behind the bar of the violet edge and raised his glass. His crew joined him. Together they'd taken their first territory in a city that ate the weak and crushed the ambitious. But they weren't weak. They weren't crushed. They were humans, and they'd just proven that meant something. Johnny downed his drink and smiled. This was only the beginning. Bright City thought it knew what humans were capable of. It was about to learn otherwise. The violet edge was theirs. The war for Bright City had begun. And Johnny Hazard wasn't planning to lose. He set down his glass and looked at his crew. Get some rest. Tomorrow we start expanding. There's a warehouse district 2 blocks over that's been neutral ground for too long. I think it's time someone claimed it. Tony raised his eyebrow. Already? Why wait? The Kravix are licking their wounds. Every other syndicate is watching to see what we do next. We show weakness now, and everything we fought for tonight was for nothing. Lisa nodded slowly. He's right. We need to press the advantage. Then it's settled. Johnny walked to the window and looked out at Merchants Row. Bodies were being cleared by scavengers. Wreckage was being hauled away. The city was already moving on, already forgetting the blood that had been spilled. But the syndicates wouldn't forget. They'd remember the night a human crew held against 200 Kravix. They'd remember the artillery platform that exploded, the soldiers that fled, the territory that changed hands. And they'd wonder what else humanity was capable of. Johnny Hazard smiled at his reflection in the window, at the human who'd carved out a piece of Bright City through blood and violence and sheer refusal to back down. Behind him, his crew tended their wounds and cleaned their weapons, already preparing for the next fight. This was their city now. They just had to take it, one territory at a time, one battle at a time, until every syndicate knew that humans weren't prey. They were predators, and the hunt had only just begun.